Alright, Season 1 2024 Lime Rock West Bend Chicane. Fun track if you're new to Lime Rock, really fun track to drive, but it is a narrow track, a lot of corners, easy to spin yourself out. If there's a crash in front of you, easy to get collected, so keep your eyes up. Uh, the racing can be really good here, but it can also be pretty crashy, so watch out for that. If you are new to the Formula Ford, or if you've been in the Rookie Series and have thought that you don't want to mess around with the setups, just to reiterate, it is not that tricky. The iRacing setup is really competitive. If you're driving well, it's not going to really give you much trouble. The only thing you have to change is the brake bias and the fuel levels. However, if you do want to tweak the car, that can help fit your driving style and such. So if you're tired of the 12-minute races that end when your tires are just getting good, give this a whirl. So if you're new to the channel, we'll go through the setup, then go through the track guide in slow-mo, and then run it out at full speed. So here is the setup. It is changed a bit from the iRacing setup. The car is not as low as it goes. We're going to make use of some of the curbs here, but it is lowered a bit. Compression stuff is the same. Brake bias, that's a personal thing, but if you're locking them up too much, just increase that brake bias. The suspension and such. So got the spring rate not as low as it goes. It's a 26 here, and the rear is as low as it goes. And if you've been watching my channel, you know I like to play around with the camber, so the camber's changed up here a little bit on the different tires just to get more even temperature and wear. Toe in just increased a little bit in the front. Ride height again in the rear, just not as low as it goes, lowered a little bit. One of the big changes here is the ARB. I did reduce it one notch, so it's 10 mils. 15 I find makes the car just a little, that back end a little too sketchy. It's a knife edge. If you turn the car too much, it's so easy to spin. But it does give you more rotation, so check that out. Rear compression is untouched. Fuel levels 13. That does 22 laps, I believe. So that's iffy. You might 14 is going to be safe for a race. 13 might be a little iffy. Gear stack is tall. For that straight, you need the tall gear stack. And actually, the gearing I do prefer tall versus standard anyway. So yeah, that is the one thing is I'll talk about the track temp here in a second. Track temp is pretty low with this setup. In the actual race week, if the track temp is low, you might possibly want to turn this up one notch. I think it goes to 44 and this one goes to 32 or something like that. So if the track temp is really low and you want the car to have a little bit more rotation, I would leave the ARB at 10, but just increase this value, your spring rate, in the front and rear one notch. That will give the car more rotation. However, if the track is going to be pretty hot and a lot slipperier, this setup is probably going to be better, so just be aware of that. So we'll go into the track temp here. So the calendar isn't out, so I have absolutely no idea what the track temp is going to be. I just had to basically set this on low. So it's 21, 40% usage. So just watch out for that. If this track is pretty slick, especially on cold tires, if the track is 25 or if it's 30 degrees, grip is going to be a lot less. So just watch out for that. Again, with this setup, if the track is 25 or 30, this is probably your best bet. But if it is, hovering around 20, again, you may want to increase those spring values if you want a little bit more rotation in the car. So we'll get into the lap. So coming into turn one, Looking for, now you can look for the 2 board on the left. I prefer to look for the blue cone myself. Um, Either works. You're braking just before the 2 board, or in my view, it's, you know, it's kind of right when the cone is off my mirror and tire. Here is what I use. Hard on the brakes here in 4th gear course, down into 3rd. You really got to slow the car down here. There is room if you come in too hot. This part is probably the widest part of the track, but you want to get tight up against this curb and just letting the car roll in and getting on a little throttle just to keep that back end steady. And then at the end of this curb, shifting down into 2nd. Again, you want to make sure the car is slowed down enough when you shift down into 2nd, otherwise you can lock that rear up and spin out. And then again, just picking up the throttle, sort of feathering it. You don't want to run too wide here, and in fact you want to turn in and get on this curb. These rounded cement curbs can disrupt the car. That's why we have the ride height higher, so they won't disrupt the car too much. And then just picking up the throttle, working your way up to full throttle. If you are defending, you run the car out wide here, and you're going to want to hold an inside line. However, if you want to do a fast lap, you do want to get over to the right. And what you're looking for is the rubber barrier here. This lamp post just past the rubber barrier, that's going to be our next not braking marker, but lifting marker. So in 3rd gear, lifting, just sort of feathering the throttle here a little bit. Again, if you are going defensive, if there's a car behind you and you're protecting this line, you may want to leave this in 2nd gear and just hold the inside. Cold tires, yeah, just watch out. This can get a little slick. And then just easing on the throttle. Now when you're there's no real great spot, but when you're kind of middle of this corner, you're going to shift down into 2nd and turn in, getting onto these curbs, making use, trying to open this up as much as possible. These flat rippled curbs, they're not going to disrupt the car at all. Just make sure you don't get an X there, cut it too much. And then holding it in 2nd gear. Now this one I have a tendency to turn in early, so don't do that, it's bad. So there's a kink here in the white line, so kind of using that as a reference point, or you can use these signs as a turn-in point. Yeah, turning in, picking up the throttle as much as you can, and we're shifting up into 3rd. Now this is a tricky corner. If you run this wide, it's really going to cost you. And again, because we've got the ride height up a little bit, it's better to get on this curb than to run wide. You don't want to get on the curb in the front here. That will bottom out the car and push you wide. But the last half of this curb, if you get on it, it's actually a lot of times I use it. This particular lap I didn't. But it's okay to get on this last half of the curb around here, just to cut the corner here a little bit and make sure you don't run out too wide. And it's just important to get into that 3rd gear, because this is sort of a straight. It's a long stretch of full throttle, so, and just you can run the car out wide here to the curb. So coming into this one, cold tires. Even first lap, you may want to do this in 3rd. You have to watch out for, if you get on the grass before the cement here, you do get an X. Not the end of the world in a race, but on your quali lap, that's obviously going to cost you. I cut this darn close. I don't even know how I didn't get an X here, but I did not. So you can also get a little bit of your tire on the grass here just to open this up. So on hot tires, just lifting when we get onto the curb. Cold tires, again, lifting before the curb, and then turning the car in. You just sort of have to manage the throttle here, because you don't want to run this out too wide. Make sure you get tight up against this curb. Again, with the ride height, if you get a little bit on this, not the end of the world, better than running it out wide. And picking up the throttle as early as possible, because this is another big straight. And the important part is here is get that wheel straight before the crest of the ridge. If you have the wheel turned when you get to the crest of this ridge, you're going to find out what happens, and it's not good. So make sure that wheel is straight. You will get a little bit of wobble depending on how straight you have that wheel. So watch out for the guys in front of you as well. If they're going sideways up that hill on the crest, you know they're going to spin out, or at least spin anyway. So full throttle. So coming into this one's a little tricky. You can use the front of this curb here on the right, or go by these signs on the left. This is a hard braking zone, down into second, and letting the car roll in. You want to carry as much speed as you can into this without going in too deep or spinning out. And then at the tip of this curb where it turns to the right, shifting down into first, just trying to carry more speed into here as much as possible. You have to watch out here. If you carry too much speed and you shift down into first, those rears are going to lock up and spin you out. So make sure you have the car slowed by the time you get down into first, running it out to mid-track, and then turning in tight. And this is a very tricky area. You want to get onto these curbs. Again, I got this as tight as you can without getting an X. If you get a tire onto this grass, you get an X. In a race, not a big deal. But for your quali lap, of course, that's trouble. And even if you cut this a little bit, get a tire on the grass, it does open up the next section. So if you want to try and gain a little time and want to take an X, not the worst thing to do. So in first, just managing the throttle, and this is where you don't want to cut. If you get onto this grass, if you get a tire on this grass, you get an X, which isn't too bad. But if your right tire, I believe is the rule, if your right tire crosses this white line, so if you have your right tire onto the curb here, you get a slowdown, and it is a painful slowdown. So watch out for that. So yeah, you can't cut it much more than I did here. And you'll notice I'm not full throttle. This curb, and especially if you did get a tire on the grass, it is slick. And if you were full throttle, you are probably going to spin out here and say hello to this wall. So just watch out for that. You gotta watch the throttle as you get through this as you get through this corner. So, and then picking up full throttle once you're on the pavement, and just working your way up the gears. So here, this is another tricky one. This yellow paint is kind of where you want to turn in, and it's important to get the turn in right on this. If you run wide, you're going to cost yourself a lot of time. So third gear, and then just getting up into fourth as quick as you can, getting up tight against this curb again. With the ride height, if you get onto this curb a little bit, that's better than running wide. Ideally, you want to keep this on the track, but using that curb is not going to cost you much. Certainly a lot better than running wide. And then just picking up the throttle. This is a long stretch to the finish line, so if the guy in front of you messed up, definitely you can go for an overtake here to the finish line. This straight, however, you don't get as much draft as you think you are going to get. So watch out going into turn one in the race, because it's hard to actually get the pass done, but you will be carrying more speed. So watch out for your braking marker. Make sure you don't go too hot into turn one. So yeah, 57.3. I think that's going to be pretty competitive time. We'll see you on track. Good luck out there, and we'll run it out at full speed. See you next time.